Hi, my name is Shiva Ozma and I'm founder of science writing company Fancy Comma LLC, and today I'm going to talk to you about why scientists should practice scientific communication, or SciComm. Communication skills are essential in science to explain your work to others in your field, to explain your work to people outside of your field who are scientists, and to explain the significance of your work and its essential concepts to the general public. The benefits of science communication include the breakdown of information silos and the improvement of science literacy, which is one's ability to understand and critically interpret science. In addition, science communication promotes the flow of science knowledge to and from scientists to the rest of society. Scientists have a huge role to play in science literacy. As I mentioned, science literacy is familiarity with science and scientific concepts, understanding of the scientific method, and making sense of and being able to critically analyze observations and theories. Scientists' role in science literacy is that they can explain science and boost understanding and awareness, promote critical thinking skills, and participate in the larger media conversation around science topics. So, why are scientists' voices so important in SciComm? Here's an example of why I feel that scientists' voices are incredibly underutilized in the reporting of science in the media and in society's understanding of science more generally. Here's an article from The Guardian that basically, as it's been covered here and in other mainstream media sources, says there's no safe amount of alcohol consumption for the brain, with even moderate drinking adversely affecting nearly every part of it. And they did a study of 25,000 people in the United Kingdom, and apparently their study just flat out means that any amount of alcohol consumption is harmful to the brain, as they say in the title. So, as someone who studied alcoholism and alcohol's effect of the brain on the brain, I know that there's a certain limit of drinks that most healthy, non-alcoholic people that don't have any substance abuse problems can drink, and this seems to turn everything on its head. But I think the problem here, which I have identified after doing looking at the actual paper, is that the findings of this paper are grossly overstated, and I'm not sure if it's due to the scientists explaining this in a way that doesn't really take into account its actual impact, or because the journalists were really, really interested in this and just thought that this meant that any amount of alcohol consumption is harmful to the brain. But there's clearly a very big disconnect here between what this study is actually saying and what journalists are portraying the study to mean. So even just taking a closer look at the actual article that was in The Guardian, we can find that the study is not peer-reviewed yet. So that's already a huge red flag. Um, as you may know, peer review is the gold standard in science, and it's important for scientific papers to be evaluated by a jury of their peers in order to have scientific merit and rigor. So that's one thing that's missing from this. The other thing that's missing from this discussion is a conversation about how impactful this study is, what the study actually did, beyond just like finding that drinking alcohol is bad for your brain. They do say the more alcohol you drink, the lower the brain volume. So I decided to dig deeper. I decided to dig deeper because I'm a scientist, and a scientist would know that preprints are not peer-reviewed, and that peer review is what makes an academic science study impactful. A scientist would also know the exact statistical methods used and potentially their flaws. They would also know what the findings are in the context of the greater literature on alcoholism and brain volume, and potentially who the researchers are, and if they have a track record of doing good work. And finally, a scientist would know to apply critical thinking skills and figure out that the study was a simple correlational analysis and that correlation doesn't imply causation. And sadly, that's the main flaw that happened in the reporting of this article. So here's a screenshot of the abstract and focusing on the results of this paper. And the first sentence here says, alcohol consumption was negatively linearly associated with global gray matter volume. So this was just a simple correlation looking at alcohol consumption and gray matter volume. And actually, I looked at the paper and it was actually self-reported alcohol consumption correlated with global gray matter volume. So the fact that this was just a correlational analysis, it's not peer-reviewed, it has a bunch of other minor things that I personally take issue with that I don't know will hold up in peer review. I'm not a scientist, but I think it would be interesting to see what an actual peer review panel says about this study because it clearly is overstating its findings. So the point here is that all of this nuance and detail is lost when the people reporting these studies don't have a science background and haven't done science research. So that's why scientists have a really important role to play in communicating science effectively in a way that conveys the nuances and impact of scientific findings in the proper context. If you're interested in a scholarly perspective on SciComm, I recommend Illingworth and Allen's Effective Science Communication Second Edition book. It discusses types of SciComm used to discuss science, and they focus on two main types. The two main types of SciComm are inward versus outward SciComm. Inward SciComm involves talking about the intricacies of your field with others in your field, and it may take the form of writing an academic peer-reviewed paper or giving a talk at a seminar or colloquium. Outward SciComm refers to SciComm that flows out from the ivory tower. It can take the form of public lectures, blogs, guest essays, presentations at a local museum, and so on. Outward SciComm can also be less structured, such as interactions with friends and family and social media, for example, tweets and Facebook posts. Scientists' views are important. Scientists have a place at the table when it comes to global issues. This includes participating in the larger scientific discourse with society and even interacting with policymakers. Scientists empower themselves and science when they speak up and share their knowledge for the common good. Not all journalists are scientists, and as I just explained to you, that can be a very important deficit in science reporting and science communication. Often, if you're a specialist in a given field, you have an insightful, unique view into a topic that others don't. Scientists can participate and shape the science conversation. And as a scientist, there are many ways you can communicate your insight through public talks, blogs, TikToks, Instagram, Twitter, etc. You can also participate in SciComm Chat to improve your science communication skills. Follow SciComm Club on Twitter to keep up with the weekly chats and use the hashtag SciCommChat to chat with the SciComm Chat community. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to communicate science effectively as a scientist, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @FancyComma or visit us on the web at www.fancycomma.com where you can check out our blog for more unique and informative insights on science writing and science communication.